Another year has passed by, and as such, that means it's time for yet another installment of the Simpsons annual Treehouse of Horror stories. For those of you that don't know, last year I reviewed every single segment from Treehouse of Horror, and released the entire video on Halloween. That's definitely what happened. I did not, in fact, bite off more than I could chew, and in turn had to release the video in 2 parts, one part releasing at Christmas, and another part releasing this past April. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. Anyways, I had to binge through 90 segments in a short amount of time, and as such, my views towards these specials started to turn sour towards the end of the marathon, but that could also be due to the fact that The Simpsons has been on for over 30 years, and there's no conceivable way that a show could continue that way without deteriorating in quality a little bit. I'd say it was a little from column A, a little from column B. But I'd say we ended off the marathon on a positive note, as last year's Treehouse of Horror installment was one of the best in recent years, with not a single segment that I would call downright bad. Needless to say, last year's Treehouse of Horror, as well as having some months of respite from watching anything related to Treehouse of Horror, has left me in a bit of a positive mood, and made me actually looking forward to this year's Treehouse of Horror for a while. But then, something interesting happened.
Al, what else? What else do we have to look forward to?
We have 5 segments on this year's Halloween show for the first time. We're going to play one of them, 5 segments.
At San Diego Comic-Con 2021, Al Jean, the current executive producer of The Simpsons, said that this year's Treehouse of Horror would be a different format, in that there would be 5 segments instead of the traditional 3 segments. They also showed off one of the segments at San Diego Comic-Con, but I decided not to watch it, so that I could see it on premiere night, going in blind. Now, when I heard of this, I was a bit skeptical. There was a rumor going around for a while that the episode was going to be a double-length episode to compensate for the additional segments, so 44 minutes instead of the traditional 22 minutes. But this rumor was effectively squashed, so that meant that somehow they were going to fit 5 segments into the 22-minute time slot. I was definitely interested in how they were going to accomplish this, but given that one of my biggest gripes with the segments is that the short runtime of each segment has a lot of them ending abruptly or feeling directionless, there was definitely an air of doubt in my mind. But now that the episode is out, I saw it, and yeah, saying that there's 5 segments, while technically true, is a bit of false advertising. For starters, one of the segments was just the opening to the Treehouse of Horror special, which I mean, I guess that counts as a segment, kind of, but the fact that this was touted as its own segment, when many past Treehouse of Horror episodes have had opening segments that weren't labeled as their own segments, I don't know, that seems like a bit of a stretch. Another one, which was apparently the segment shown off at San Diego Comic-Con, was less than 2 minutes long, so it seems like more of an interlude between segments than a segment on its own. To me, at least, with the exception of Treehouse of Horror 2, in order for something to be considered a segment, it needs to have its own title card, which, yeah, the 2 that I mentioned above do not, so in my eyes, I don't think they're really segments. But if Al Jean says that they are, then I guess I'll make an exception and cover them. But on the condition that I'll get those out of the way right now. The opening segment is a parody of Bambi, with Bart as Bambi, Marge as Bambi's mother, and Milhouse as Thumper. One thing that you'll notice is that the animation and art style is different than the traditional Simpsons look. It's reminiscent of the film that it's parodying, and I think it works really well here. Though that's where the praise ends, because when I took a step back, I began to think, wait, why the fuck are they parodying Bambi for their Halloween special? Bambi has like nothing to do with anything horror or Halloween related, and it doesn't even fall into the sci-fi category either. All this segment does is recount Bambi's mother's death, except the mother actually survives since Bambi's father, portrayed by Homer, was able to kill the hunter. So then why is it in this episode at all? I mean, there's some light gore, but modern Simpsons episodes have light gore from time to time, and I think that's the biggest problem with this segment in air quotes. You could place this in any modern Simpsons episode, and it really fit right in. Hell, you could easily repurpose this into a couch gag. So far, this episode isn't off to a good start. The interlude segment sees a stranger reading a book to Maggie, entitled The Telltale Bart. The book recounts every month of the year and the nasty pranks that Bart pulls every one of those months. This segment also takes on another animation and art style, and I already like it a lot more. It's replicating the style of Edward Gorey, who was most well known for his eerie pen and ink Victorian drawings. This style fits so much better for a Halloween-themed episode. The bleak colors, the scratchy look of the props and backgrounds, the black eyes with white pupils, everything just comes together so perfectly. It really bugs me actually that this interlude is less than a minute and a half and it's not its own full-blown segment. This had the most promise and will probably be my favorite segment of the whole episode. Then again, I'm getting ahead of myself. I mean, if this could only take up a minute and a half of the total runtime, that must mean that the remaining segments that actually got the full time are much better, right? Right? Why do I feel like I'm gonna regret asking that?
This house is an allegory! Emphasis on gory!
It was basically inevitable that The Simpsons were going to do a parody of Parasite. It was the most popular thing of 2 years ago. They pulled a similar stunt 2 years ago with their Stranger Things parody, and if you watched my previous Treehouse of Horror video, you'd remember that I really wasn't a huge fan of that segment, since they tried to cram in a season's worth of a TV show into a 6-minute segment, and it resulted in a lackluster retelling of the first season that relied heavily on Stranger Things references, which is bad enough, but they weren't even all that funny.
I didn't know you had psychic powers.
Girls are afraid to use them because then we're called unfeminine. We needlessly lost a lot of good witches at Salem.
Hi, I'm Professor Comedy.
No! Boo!
I'm happy to report that the Parasite segment is leagues better than the Stranger Things parody, as well as many other recent movie parodies that they've tried to pull off. I think what really helps this segment is that the characters, especially the core family, actually feel like they were made for the roles that they were assigned to. Instead of having, oh, I don't know, say Bart plays something like a handicapped war veteran that gets a 10-year-old alien girl pregnant. No, I'm still not over how bad that segment was, why do you ask? Not only do the characteristics match up with the characters they're assigned to, but it helps that in the show, they're portrayed as a lower middle class family. So having them play the main family from Parasite is actually very believable. I also like how Kirk Van Houten plays a combination of the maid and the chauffeur. I wasn't exactly sure what they were going to do with the maid character, and I'm really glad that they gave it to Kirk, because, I mean, I love Kirk. I also really like the twist where it's not just the Van Houtens living in the basement of the estate, but the entire town. The segment exaggerates the messages and allegories of Parasite to, what I believe at least, a successful result.
Oh, that sounds great! Unless it's socialism.
Not totally, but certain aspects are similar to socialism.
Kill her!
But yeah, I mean, it's The Simpsons' take on Parasite. You can really only go as far as you can with that. Its story beats play out very similarly to the movies, just at a sped-up pace. It's definitely nowhere near their best movie parody, but it's one of the more memorable ones in recent years. It's pretty okay, and that's really all I have to say. I like the Itchy and Scratchy Snowpiercer parody. And, oh look, it's Mr. Sparkle. Haven't seen him in a while. And, yeah, that's about it. On to the next segment. I don't remember segues being this awkward last time.
Every year, 3 scary stories. 2 of them good and a lame one in the middle.
I was really looking forward to this one, because based on the title, it was going to be a segment with horror roots, and I was kind of right, though more so about the roots than the horror. So after being fed up with Bart telling scary stories in his treehouse, Homer decides to chop the tree down. While he's napping on the job, however, the tree is struck by lightning and comes to life to seek revenge on Homer. Wait a second, this is just a mascot segment with trees! Anyway, the tree goes around town and sees how the trees are being tortured and abused by humans, and decides to get revenge on the people of Springfield. Wait a second, this is just the Great Pumpkin segment with trees! He brings the other trees back to life, and he and his tree army wreak havoc on Springfield. The people of Springfield try to fight back, but they're easily outmatched and outnumbered. The segment ends with the trees taking over, and the citizens being used in an ironic sense to please the trees. Wait a second, this is just the Transformers segment with trees! Okay, so you can probably tell that I was not a huge fan of this segment based on how I just tore it apart. For starters, in case you couldn't tell, it feels like the most unoriginal segment we've had in a long time, which is ironic given all the movie parodies we've gotten in recent years. It feels like a stitched-together version of previous Treehouse of Horror segments, and they're all connected in a way that is never actually really explained. Why did the lightning bring the tree to life? How did the tree bring the other trees to life? No idea. I'll admit this is a minor complaint. I didn't expect every segment to explain every little detail behind its reasoning. But instead of giving us even a glimpse of a reason as to why this happens, they instead fill the segment with jokes. We don't get any idea as to how the tree came to life, but hey, here's a joke about Groot! They really wanted this to be the funniest segment of the episode with how many jokes are forced in, and literally none of them land. Except maybe like one line that Homer says in the beginning. Other than that, though, this is one of the unfunniest segments to date. And in a segment that's mostly jokes, that's not really a good thing?
You're not a tree, you're a plant.
Yes, but I identify as a tree. I'm a transplant. Hi, I'm Professor Comedy.
No! Boo!
The one and only positive thing that I have to say about this segment is that I liked how it started with Bart telling a scary story to his sisters in Milhouse in his treehouse, harkening back to the very first Treehouse of Horror episode. Yep, that's all the positives I have to say about this one.
Killing you is very important to us. Please hold. Your curse will be answered in the order it was received.
Kinda shocked that it took them this long to do a parody of The Ring, but needless to say, this is probably my favorite segment of the night. That's actually a segment. The Edward Gorey bit definitely beats it out. My one and only gripe with this segment is that for whatever reason, the cursed video is spread using TikTok. Was it so hard for them just to say internet video? Did they really have to name drop TikTok? It's gonna age the segment so poorly. Other than that though, this segment was a lot of fun. I can appreciate how it gets right into it and doesn't waste any time. It literally starts with Sherry and Terry stating that they watched the video, and then immediately after, they're decapitated by Ralph. According to the curse, once you watch the video, you die in 7 days. Bart and Lisa, noticing the rapidly dropping kids, go to Skinner with no luck, only for Willie to come to their rescue to explain what's going on. Apparently, years ago, a second grader named Mary was pranked so badly on Valentine's Day that she threw herself down the school well, only to be discovered 7 days later. Lisa decides to tackle the problem head on, and watches the video. When she gets the call that she'll die in 7 days, Lisa demands that she dies now. After some reluctance on the curse's end, an apparition of Mary appears from the TV and, wait a second, why is it coming from the TV if the curse is spread using TikTok? Wow, way to botch that one up, writers. Anyways, Lisa is able to gain Mary's trust by giving her a Valentine's Day card, and the two of them become friends, until Lisa's obsessive nature drives Mary to the breaking point and she jumps back down the well. And yeah, I mean, that's it. It's a simple plot to say the least, but it definitely is effective with what it tries to pull off, and it's infinitely funnier than whatever the stupid tree segment was trying to accomplish with its jokes.
I don't know who you are or what you want, but let me give you my credit card number.
I don't know, maybe I'm biased. I really appreciate it when they don't parody a modern popular movie from the past 2 years and actually go back and try to parody a classic. I think it allows the writers to make jokes that aren't just referential humor. I can even forgive the whole TikTok thing. Okay, no, I really can't, but its negative impact is cushioned by the quality of this segment. Oh look, there's Kang and Kodos. And yeah, that's Treehouse of Horror 32. All in all, it's a pretty okay episode. I really enjoyed the Parasite and Ring segments, and despite the fact that it's more of an interlude than a segment, the Edward Gorey segment was fantastic. The Bambi opener, while it looked nice, was pointless for a Halloween special, and the less said about that really dumb tree segment, the better. I don't want to talk about the tree segment anymore. It's definitely not better than last year's Treehouse of Horror. I think that episode is a shining example of what modern Treehouse of Horror episodes should try to be. But this episode was alright though. That being said, I really want to point out something that makes me a bit nervous for the future of Treehouse of Horror. At San Diego Comic-Con, they made a big deal of the fact that the episode was going to have 5 segments instead of 3. But it was really more like 3 segments, an interlude and an opening. The problem is that the 3 segments on their own already have a problem trying to tell a cohesive story with their constrained time frames. Adding any extra segments or interludes just takes even more time from those segments, making them feel even less cohesive. I already mentioned that I really like the Parasite and Ring segments, but I'll admit that I think they would have benefited a little bit more from a minute or 2 each. Also, if more interludes means more things like the Edward Gorey style, I'd much rather have it be a full segment. And for that to work, I really do think that they should try to make a double-length Treehouse of Horror episode, at least just to test out the waters. It'll give the segments some more room to breathe without feeling cramped into their respective time frames, and they can even add some interludes to that thanks to the extended runtime. Will they ever do an extended Treehouse of Horror episode? I don't know, I'm just the guy that overanalyzes Simpsons Halloween episodes. Anyways, I can't wait for the Treehouse of Horror in a year or two when they do a parody of Squid Game. I say that in a half-joking manner, but I'm pretty sure they've already run out of ideas, so when it does happen, just remember who called it.